something.
In over my head. Vex trap. Failsafe.
Vex trap? What is Cade getting us into this time?
Hello, this is Carlos, and what you're about to check out is our initial impressions of Destiny 2. Matthew's working on the full review of the game, but during episode 174 of the TMG Podcast, we started talking about Destiny. Since I played a ton of Destiny 1, and so has Matthew, we started the conversation by talking about the first game, then slowly started comparing it with the sequel. Now, during this time, I've only played the first few hours of Destiny 2, while Matthew has played a good chunk of it at this point. Take note, this is the first initial impressions of the game that I'd like to share with you guys. Full review will be up soon on the site after we've explored the endgame grind and its difficult content available after completing the campaign. But yeah, hope you enjoy our little discussion, and if you have played the game, do let us know your thoughts about it on the comments below. That's about it. Enjoy the gameplay footage, enjoy the discussion, and I'll see you on the next video. Let's talk about a game that you played, but you're currently working on Destiny 2.
Destiny 2. Yeah. By Bungie.
By Activision.
Yeah.
Oh my god. You've played the first one, right? I played the first one immensely. And you played, what, the campaign of the first one? I mean, I remember you picking it up.
Yeah, I played quite a bit of the first one. I couldn't tell you exactly what percent I did complete, but enough for me to get to level 25 for sure, and that's a substantial chunk. I finished the main campaign, the Black Garden, and I think I did a few side quests and strikes and crucibles and stuff. But I started on the Taken King, but never completed it.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I only got the second expansion for that and pretty much played the hell out of Destiny 1. I completed the raids, did all the crap that Destiny 1, the original one, was providing. And really quick, did you even like Destiny 1?
Oh man, you know what? Honestly, if you really asked me, I thought it was a fucking snore for me. Like the combat's don't get me wrong, the combat's engaging, and the loot the feedback loop between questing, shooting, and looting is about as satisfying as you can expect from a formula that's been in place since Diablo 1.
Right, yeah,
but
that's true.
There just wasn't enough narrative context or to keep me motivated to play Destiny 1 for its own sake.
Right.
And it's a shame because when Bungie first announced Destiny 1, I was pretty hyped for it. Like, not crazy hyped, but I was just like, oh, here's an original IP set in a massively multiplayer world from one of the pioneering, developers of console shooters, So we've got
and for more context, the one who Bungie's best known for Halo.
Halo. Yeah, so the developers of Halo, so we got a pedigreed studio that did freaking Halo. We've got a high sci-fi fantasy, which is totally my jam. That's two buttons that's already two pieces that made me go ooh. And it's an online shooter. Yes, sign me up. But when that game came out and people and reports started coming out that it was ultimately unsatisfying from a story perspective, I was all sad face emoji.
Right. No, and I was actually in the same boat as you. Like, I am also I like sci-fi as well, and I'm a huge fan of Halo as well. And then they even added a little bit extra spice that made me all giddy and excited. It's the RPG elements, the loot grinding. I live for that shit. I mean, damn it. So I was like super excited the same way, and I guess we're also in the same boat because once it hit. There's really no story. They have no emphasis of fleshing out what they were creating. They just made a space and just do all the things.
Yeah,
doesn't matter what it is.
The game's Destiny 1 is 3 years old now, so if any of you joining us here in the podcast don't know exactly how Destiny managed to pull off a game quote unquote without story, the way they did it was that they gave you this handcrafted world of this sort of post 1,000 years after the Golden Age post-apocalyptic Earth, with lots of different monster factions going on, like a bunch of sentient robots and cosmic beings from another physical plane, and the Red Legion and all that stuff. They gave you this wonderful world to run around and shoot and loot in, but most of the story was contained in grimoire cards, these cards that you would get upon completing certain quests and maps that would be accessible in your app. So if you wanted to learn more about who you were shooting at and what these obscure words that some of the NPCs would say meant, you had to take out your smartphone and open your Destiny app and access the grimoire card. And I don't really have a problem with that, but if you can't be bothered to okay, the grimoire app should be a supplement. It should be the way that the game's story is so compelling, or at least the characters in the world are so compelling, it makes you feel like, oh man, I love shooting to find out more about the world. And you get so addicted to that world that you go like, where can I learn more about this fantastic world? And then you start opening the app. It shouldn't be the app shouldn't be a substitute for the story. It should be a supplement to it.
And I think the best example for that this is how I'm gonna compare it to, because when Overwatch was released, it had a similar take where it didn't have any story. It didn't in the game, okay? In the game, it didn't have any story, but everything around it supports it. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
In Destiny, it only had the Grimoire cards, and when you play the game, when it had a campaign, it further just boggles your mind, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, you don't know what's going on.
It suffers from what I call proper noun salad, which is basically a bunch of characters dropping things that are dropping names and terms that are fully capitalized without any real explanation for what they are. And the game became infamous for that kind of like clumsy exposition with characters who say things like, I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Oh my god, I literally like, I remember when I heard that, I literally stood up and like, I can't believe they just said that, because I really don't even the game doesn't even understand itself. Like,
yeah, and that bit was so deservingly ridiculed that it becomes lampshaded. Spoiler in Destiny 2 when a character makes fun of the line. A character in Destiny 2 says, "I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to understand." I'm not telling you who it is or where what happened.
I like how Bungie has a little bit of sense of humor in terms of it.
That's their freaking confession that they knew they bungled that.
In the end, despite them having that negative or that problem within Destiny 1, it was able to create a community, a fan base out of it. I didn't like, that's the most negative thing out of Destiny in terms of how they failed to like shape, to really flesh out the world and really give you a good narrative, a good story, even characters to like, or to interact with. I played for a month. I had 3 characters. I went to the raid. I met a couple of new friends. I loved the PvP multiplayer gameplay. I was just playing it day in, day out because I love it. It was my jam. I love loot grinding. The game, the shooting was tight, and the loot was actually satisfying. And that was enough for people to keep on going, despite it having, I think, mediocre, just okay reviews. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If people were disappointed of what they were hoping for something more, but I'm like, hey, you guys are still playing anyway. That's fine. That's cool.
It got, in my opinion, it got the inoffensive 8 treatment, which is a game that has severe problems in certain non-essential areas like story.
Right.
But good enough to be excused so that they could give them an 8. I'm not suggesting any kind of media conspiracy. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just saying is that, with gameplay that satisfying and a press that doesn't really want to tear down something for the sake of it, it was really hard for them to give Destiny any opinion lower than an 8. It's outliers, with valid opinions who really tore into Destiny for its lacking narrative. And you were talking about how community a community rallied around Destiny 1 in spite of that. And you know what? I don't begrudge them for it because, like I said, the game is satisfying. And it's funny also that you were talking about these NPCs and characters, you know, who exist in the game who are like very confusing. It's funny how many of those characters are actually reused in Destiny 2, and they're great. Like, you know, people who aren't familiar with Destiny 2 or who never played Destiny 1 might think that these characters were invented for Destiny 2, but they're not. They emerged fully formed in Destiny 1. They're just given something to do and something to say that's actually interesting in Destiny 2.
Yep. And moving on to the sequel, because that's what you're playing, and I also played a good, like, starting the first few missions right when you unlock the director and everything. So it's like, maybe, I think it's like 2-3 hours, I think, of it.
Yeah.
To put more context to Destiny 1 story, I think the first 2 hours of how much I've played up to level 6, it already had a lot more story compared to the whole of Destiny 1.
Yeah, what Destiny 1 does very quickly is it tries to ground you in the world right away. You know what I mean? Instead of just making you feel like you're lost, because in Destiny 1 you wake up and you're sort of like, oh, hey, world around me, what am I going to do? And the ghost guides you. Here, it's like everything begins with a bang. Everything begins with, it's just a strong opener, you know, with
There's a drive.
Yeah, with not just with an attack, with an attack on the tower, but the attack on the tower serves as a justification for all the characters to start talking to you and say, all right, we're in trouble. This is what's happening. What do we need to do? Who am I? This is why you're listening to me. You know, all those questions get answered at the very beginning of the game, grounding you immediately in the world of Destiny 2.
And it's, I don't know, for me, I like the pace of how I felt it, but what about you? Like, you've played more of it. How is it? We've talked about Destiny 1 a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You now hitting the sequel, how is it right now? As in from when it started and then from where you are at, because I don't think you finished the game yet.
No, I think I'm almost done. I'm down to level 18.
Right.
I'm currently
the max
playing,
level I think is still 20 for the
level
for
20.
The sequel?
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't want to damn the game with faint praise, nor would I like to over celebrate it. But basically, just it actually has a story, and the story is mostly functional from a narrative point of view. But it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing to have characters and to have personalities that are colorful and interesting to listen to. That it makes the game super pleasant. And you know, with regards to the pacing I think is pretty bog standard, like 4-act structure. It's very, it's good. It's a good set of pacing, introducing you to, like, the way the second part of the game is structured is it introduces you to each of the key members of the Vanguard, and the Vanguard is basically this elite council of this elite squad of soldiers who sort of represent the classes in Destiny. So, for example, you got Zavala, the Titan, Ikora, the Warlock, and Cade 6, the Hunter. Those three characters, so they get introduced in order once you touch down in the world, and alongside them, different monster factions are introduced as well. So when you start one mission, you might you'll start the whole story mission fighting mostly Taken, and in another mission you'll fight mostly Taken. Vex. So it's nice and organized in a way as that you never feel confused as to who is who and what's what.
Which is the problem in Destiny 1, because you are thrown into there's Hunters, there's Titans, there's Warlocks, there's the Taken, there's the Vex, they're shooting at you. Yeah, that's pretty much all they tell you.
Your relationship with the monster factions of Destiny 1 begins with shooting and ends with shooting, and there's not much time for introspection or explanation when it's just that.
But that's actually good to hear that I'd like to think that's something they should have done in the first one. Yeah. But they're playing catch up at least for those that hasn't played Destiny 2. Yeah. And Actually, honestly, like for those who are actually interested, they should jump in the first one. They're not really. I'd like to think they're not really missing out based on what I felt in the first few hours, at least, and based on what you're telling me already. You're not gonna miss out certain details in the first one.
Yeah, I actually want to bring up like my brother is a big Destiny 1 fan actually.
Okay.
And so I enjoy talking to him because it's very interesting to see the perspective of someone totally like on the board with Destiny as opposed to my more skeptical or cynical opinion. And
Right.
he even concedes that Destiny 2 works perfectly fine without Destiny 1. The fact that
Right.
Destiny 2 actually the fact is that Destiny 2 actually introduces so much of everything inside in context that you really don't need Destiny 1 anymore because it does all the heavy lifting from a narrative perspective. Destiny 2 isn't a story sequel to Destiny 1. It's more like Destiny
One-up.
1 Redux, in terms of introducing people to the world. And, from his perspective, he was saying that it feels like a completely different game. And I think maybe I'm not 100% sure where I stand on the idea of Destiny 2 being a completely different game from Destiny 1, but I do think it's worth mentioning that there are so many quality of life improvements in Destiny 2 that don't sound really that great on a marketing buzz page, but really make all the difference in making Destiny 2 a much more user-friendly game.
Yeah, because like, if ever at this point, the community has been already established, and I remember before when people were saying that, "How's Destiny? How's Destiny? Oh, it's a good game, but don't expect don't expect any narrative to really drive you." That's what I usually tell people. Now, it's gonna be easier to say that it's a better game, just flat out, like it's just a better game.
I mean,
Just go
yeah.
for Destiny 2 now.
If Destiny 2 you're looking for like a campaign, be aware that
Yeah.
that campaign is only a small part of the game. Like that campaign is still
Yes.
Once the campaign is over, that campaign is quote unquote gone, and you're still gonna have to live with how you feel, for better or for worse, about the rest of the game. And
Yeah.
I really have to emphasize that while I'm still unsure where I am on that, like whether I'll still be playing the game after the campaign, I do think that the converted people, or those who at least enjoy loot grinding shooting for what it is, like,
Yeah.
should consider Destiny 2 that's quality of life improvements, such as making sure that you can join in and out of public events and get into death matches. It's a lot faster than it used to be, and even the way they track public events is very user friendly. Like for example, in public events before in Destiny 1, you had to like stumble on public events.
You literally just have to find it.
Yeah, you walk
You'll stumble
around,
upon
and
it.
if you were lucky, you found one. If you didn't, then you didn't. Or you would look it up online and find out where the events are gonna be, and you'd stand there, scratching your nose or scratching your head, just thinking about when it's gonna happen. In Destiny 2, they mark all the public events on the map, and they tell you, all right, in 5 minutes, there's gonna be an ether drill coming down here, and we're gonna kill, and you're gonna have to take down this tough ether drill and get some rare gear. But you know what? That's in 5 minutes. So go to the bathroom, or go. Feel free to
Find
go,
your friends.
Yeah, find your friends, or go look around and see if there are other mooks to kill, or tweak around with your inventory. Like, it seems like such an insignificant thing to announce those things 5 minutes ahead of time, but it makes the difference in making the game like accessible and like not waste your time with sort of this whole like camping and waiting for things to happen.
Yeah, because I'd like to point out that that's a good example of quality improvement for the sequel, because yes, when it comes to public events in Destiny 1, you have to just stumble upon it, to a point where we had a sequence with my friends where we go to a specific area, and usually there are like 3 areas that the public events would trigger. So one will be in one area, one will be in the other area, and one will be in the next area, and we have an idea on when it's going to happen, and whoever gets the event will just inform the other 2 to come this way. So like the players,
Which is
there's a lot
awkward
more-
and
which is awkward. It's just forcing, like you're kind of forcing your players to find ways to play your game. to
Yeah.
enjoy your content, which is really weird, and it's one of the biggest problems of Destiny 1, which I want to ask you in a bit, because like we did that, and also with matchmaking for like specific strikes, and especially the end game content, which is raids. They didn't have looking for group, like you being able to find a group in the game. You had to use third-party websites in order to find people online and then gather up in the game. Like it's not all jammed up into one. We have to get out of the game and then interact in a different platform or a different application.
That was the biggest sin. Yeah.
In Destiny 2, you don't need to do that anymore. You're just like it seems like everything is already there when you need it to pretty much enjoy all the content.
Yeah, the biggest sin of Destiny 1 was forcing players to find the fun, rather than with Destiny 2's attitude, which is the fun is here, come on over.
I remember they included that they do have a search engine already, like a looking for group. I want to ask you before when it comes to the open world, like the public events are improved. Does it feel like a lot of things are happening with these open worlds? Because in one, it feels very minimal, despite it having public events. At the same time, actually, in Destiny 1, it had very minimal public events. In Destiny 2, does it feel like it's changing things up in terms of like objectives and the things you can do in that space?
Yeah.
When you're rolling around?
Yeah, maybe I didn't have any experience with the Taken King or the Rise of Iron, so it's quite possible that some of the differences I have observed in Destiny 2 have actually been introduced through expansions. But for example, in many of the matches, the goals are very different from just killing all the things. I mean, you still have to kill all the things, but then there'll be instances where you have to park on a spot and guard it, and let data transfer or reclaim or hack a thing, or in another case, you would have to like collect things from around the environment and throw them into objects that would unlock major weapons that you could use to destroy these spider tanks. So the public events and the various ways of engaging with objectives in the game seem to be much more diverse.
How is gear though? Like how does is the as you level up or go through the campaign, is the satisfaction of getting new gear there? Because it's very simplistic in terms of stats. Like it's just like a higher number, cool, perfect.
Yeah, they folded in better loot into the campaign, in the sense that there'll be a few exotics that appear throughout the campaign story, and so the quality of gear from playing just the story is a little bit better. But also gear that is rare and higher, like blues all the way to yellows, they all also have special attributes added to them to make the gear better than just numbers. So if you get you still have the whole light level thing, wherein every piece of gear just needs to get a higher and higher number, but some of the gear still has like little benefits added to it. Although I'm not sure if some of these benefits were also present in Destiny 1.
Did you dabble with competitive side?
I played
the
Crucible once. I haven't played it the second time, which is necessary to unlock the badge, but my current plan is to run up to level 20 and finish the campaign before I dick around with those. With those things. I have been doing side quests though, adventures, and like I said, the public events. But yeah.
And those adventures is actually a new addition, because it's them actually further fleshing out the game, because you have narrative.
Yes, that's
supported side quests, which are called adventures.
Exactly. The side quests in Destiny 1 were not keen on providing you with any voiceover or any like narrative outside of the Grimoire cards.
Just do this. That's really
it was just literally like do this. But in every Destiny 2 copied the approach, and I don't mean this insultingly. I just mean that they copied the approach that many other like open world or games do, especially a game like Borderlands, which is that every planet and every sphere has its own story. So when you go to, let's say, the planet Nessus, there will be a quest giver there who has a very specific set of goals on that planet, and the kinds of enemies you'll find on that planet are a very specific kind of enemies. So all of the side quests are related to that. So, for example, one planet might be all about like the sentient robots there. So,
Right.
Every side quest you take will be about gathering data about what those robots are doing, or what or trying to get information from ancient robots, or trying to hack into existing platforms and gear that the robots own. So it's all tied on into a story about the planet. It's very much like World of Warcraft or Star Wars: The Old Republic.
That's actually pretty cool, because that's the one I did feel the adventure once I jumped in. I think Earth, in the open space of Earth, and I also noticed like dark sectors and things to like incite exploration. It feels like a bigger open space. Yeah, just by the first few hour, I can feel that there's a lot more incentive to just to like explore and do things.
Yeah, I think the way you can approach it sometimes is you can approach it like you can pick a favorite NPC or a favorite type of enemy and be like, those are all the side quests I'm gonna do.
I'm actually pretty impressed how, despite it, like, it just feels like the same game, like, just by looking at it. And I remember playing it in the beta, like, it feels like more like Destiny. That was my impression. But now, there is, like, I can start to feel like there is a slew of improvements that make it a better game. And, like, to the point where I'm actually considering to actually, like, check out the raid. Because there's a raid, there are raids. There's going to be a raid, which is, like, a very, I think how many people? I forgot how many. I think 6-player focused content. There's like strike missions, which I like to consider like the dungeons. You've played the strike missions? You like some of them?
Have I played the strike missions? I don't think I played a strike mission yet.
Yeah, those are like very like group specific instances, and then like we mentioned, there's an open world filled with a couple of like side quests and public events, and then there's a story now, and. You only played one match, but I remember playing the beta in Destiny 2, and it feels pretty good. But we'll see how it feels, because you can actually jump in competitive multiplayer at level 1, and everybody's pretty much like equalized, even though you're level 20, even though level 1 is they're all pretty much paired up in terms of stats, so there's no advantage or disadvantage from what it feels like. So overall, before moving forward to another bit, so far you're enjoying it compared to like when you played the first game?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What's the feeling? Yeah, what's the feeling of Destiny 2 so far?
Let me put it this way: before giving like my definitive verdict, especially when we do a review later on, what I can say is that the fact that I am actually motivated to play the game, outside of actually having like a responsibility to do much gaming, is already a marked improvement. To me, playing Destiny 1 was kind of a chore sometimes. Like I'd be like, and maybe the shooting would be enjoyable from a moment-to-moment basis, but overall, I'd be like, well, if I want to shoot things, I have like, 25 different shooting games I can play. you know what I mean? Like, my relationship with Destiny 1 was very begrudging.
And with 2, it's a completely different thing.
Completely different. It's like, oh, okay, I want to see how the story ends. I want to see how it plays. I want to hear more from crazy AIs and and tough warlocks and dumb robot rogues. Like I want to hear everything from them and see how all this stuff plays out. That gives me a motivation to play, and that sounds like faint praise, but it's really the difference between a good game being a good game that you want to play.